Hello everyone. I'm here to talk about computers. For my regular subscribers, this is going to be a departure because, well, my hobby is building models and building computers is not my hobby. So you guys are going to get to see some videos about how to build a computer. For those of you that are not subscribers, I'm going to start with an introduction of why would you build a computer? Well, the first question you got to ask yourself is, what are you going to use the computer for? What is your intended need? If you are going to use a computer like I do at work for doing a bunch of Word documents, Excel documents, spreadsheets, well, Excel spreadsheet, web pages, web browsing, maybe online games, you don't need an expensive computer. You don't need an incredibly good computer for that stuff. What I typically do for the office is I go to Best Buy or I go to Office Depot, one of those places. And I do look online sometimes too, and I look for open box or slightly used computers. I've been able to get some pretty decent computers for $300-400. i5 computers, Intel i5 processors, or AMD A8, A10 processors. I just recently upgraded most of the computers at work, six computers at work that way, and I paid $300-400 a piece for them. Two of them were Dell's gaming computers, light-end gaming computers. I'm putting quotes because, you know, they had AMD processors, A10s in them. They had Radeon video cards. They had 2 terabytes of hard drive space and 16 gigs of memory. And I got them for right at $350-400 each. That's a good price for that computer. I don't know if I could build one for that price. And they're overkill for what I'm doing at work, quite seriously. I mean, the most they might have 12 Word documents open at once and 10 spreadsheets and a whole bunch of PDFs. Because they're office machines, they are used for office purposes. They're overkill for that. They are great for that, and they should last for 3 or 4 years easily with the specs they have, unless we get some really bad Microsoft updates and kills them. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, can you tell I'm not a huge fan of Microsoft? Anyhow, so home use, general home use. Let's talk about that real quick, not office use. Those computers are good for general home use. If you're going to play a light video game here and there, those Dell gaming computers are going to work great. I think full retail price is around $600-700 though. I wouldn't have paid that for them. I would have just gotten a straight up i5 integrated video and all that other stuff instead. We probably ought to talk about that real quick since I brought it up. Integrated video means the video processor is part of the motherboard. Some of the Intel chips these days are getting really good at processing video. My understanding is the i7 can process video almost as well as the lower end video cards are these days. So they're trying to do away with your want of a video card. In other words, to get rid of competition. Because NVIDIA, who makes video cards, some of their processors and their video cards are outperforming some of the Intel processors. NVIDIA just isn't in the processor market. If they ever got in, well, AMD or Intel is going to take a severe hit, and one of them is probably going to shut down. And I think NVIDIA is happy where they are. So we're not worried about that. They're off in their own little world building gaming systems / computers. But that's neither here nor there. So you want a basic office machine. An integrated video card is fine. You don't need a lot of hard drive space. Memory, you're going to need more memory in that than you would for, say, home use, basic home use, because, like I said, we open, I don't know how many web documents at work at once on any of those machines. And that's where memory comes in, not processor speed. So I've wandered a little bit, so let's get back to focus. A home machine. Again, it depends what you're doing with it. I'm doing video editing, and it's a 4K camera, which means I can't have a low-end machine if I want a reasonable time frame on it, okay? So those little mini gaming computers I was talking about, the Dell ones, They're the small mini towers with the red bands around the outside, and they have red lights inside them. They would probably take the 4K video and cry, because they're just not designed to handle that kind of processing. Now, a 1080p video would be fine with it. So if you're going in video processing, you do need a higher end computer. And the one I'm about to build was built with that in mind. But we'll get to that in a little bit. So back to your general home use. Maybe some light video editing, photo editing, but mainly web surfing, some light game playing. You don't need an expensive computer. Again, going mid-range. Look at what Best Buy sells in general. That's what the general home computer is. You walk in there, you buy one, you go home. Okay? You can spend a lot of money on one of those, and when you do so, we did this with the wife's laptop. We bought it 3 years ago, I think now, and it's still fine. It still runs great. That's why you spend good money on a computer at that level for time's sake. Like the one I'm replacing was 6 years old when it died. That's a pretty good lifespan for a computer, okay? To get 6 years use out of it. If it hadn't died, I probably would get another 2 or 3. The one I'm using downstairs for email right now is 10 years old, and it's running Windows 10 just fine, because it was top end back in the day. And that's where I'm headed with this. Home users, you don't need a top end computer. You don't need to spend $2,000 on that thing. You know, get an open box computer like I do for the office, and you'll be fine. I got some Dell All-in-Ones. They're running at AMD A8 processors. And anything I would do at home, that thing will handle just fine. And I paid $250 for it. Screen, everything in one unit. It's nice. It's about the size of a small TV. In fact, you can use it as a small TV. It has an HDMI port on the back, and you can flip it right over to a small TV and treat it like a TV. They probably sell a remote for it, so you can control it that way. I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyhow, the computer I'm about to build is for video editing. It is an i7, one of the latest ones Intel put out. In fact, it came out in August, and we're in November, so it's not very old. It's old enough the prices dropped some, and that's the critical important part there. It's going to have a pretty hefty video card in it, and I did some research on this. The best video card for video editing is an NVIDIA Titan 3, I think it is. And no, I was not buying that because that costs as much as the whole computer does. So I'm going a little bit down on that. Now, the video cards for gaming happen to work well for video editing because the processor's designed to process video. And some video editing software will unload the processing to the video card instead of let the CPU do it. Because, again, the modern video cards are much more powerful than they used to be. So if you want a video editing computer, it's almost the same spec for spec as a gaming computer. Except for in a gaming computer, you can get away with an i5, you can get away with the AMD processors. The AMD processors have a lot of cores to them. And, well, currently, video games aren't set up much for a lot of cores, but video editing software is. So you would see a performance boost there. Another thing with a lot of cores is you can have lots of different things running at the same time, and the processor can handle it well because it's got 8 sub-processors, and it just throws one off to each sub-processor. Whereas the Intel processors have 4 cores, and they can't do that as well. But the price you pay for those 8 cores is heat and power. And that's going to become a factor when I talk about power supplies in a little bit, because that's in the next video is talking about power supplies. Actually, I don't have the case yet, but I usually pick the processor first. Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit when you go to build a computer. So basically, my point being here is when you want to build a computer, you need to sit down and ask yourself, what am I going to do with it? If you're going hardcore video editing, hardcore gaming, you should look top end, the best you can afford. Now, gaming doesn't need the i7. You can get an i5, and that'll save $100, $150 right there. Because the i7 processors, Intel slaps a premium on them because they're the crown jewels of the company, so to speak. You can go AMD, but the AMD processors cost about the same. when you factor in the bigger heat sink, the bigger power supply that you need for them, and cooling issues. So you've got a lot of choices there, okay, to look at. And the price difference really isn't that much when you start factoring all that in between the two. So anyhow, having said all this, want to build a computer? That's great. It's a good learning experience. Not so necessary these days. The big box computer companies like Hewlett-Packard, Dell, and a few others have tried their best to knock out the home builders. And part of that's a pricing licensing agreement with Microsoft, which I get angry about all the time. Basically, Dell pays $10 to $15 for a copy of Windows 10, and I pay $100 for the same copy. The thing is, Dell guarantees that copy will only work with that one PC, so when you go get a new PC, you throw away your copy of Windows. Whereas someone like me will be building another PC, okay? I still don't think it's fair that I should pay 10 times the price for that. And that factors in heavily into my decision. If I build a computer or I buy one. And they know that. And that's why Microsoft and Dell and all the others put that agreement in. And that's pretty much what killed the homebrew PC market. That right there. And sadly, that killed innovation in the PC market. Because I bet some of you have wondered why clock speeds on CPUs haven't increased much. Well, there you go. So getting into this, first thing you do is you decide what it's used for. Home, office, work. Okay? The PC I'm about to build is a work PC. It's going to do home office stuff. I will have multiple programs running at once on it. Sometimes 5 or 6 different programs running at a time. Multiple web browser sessions going while these programs are going. Netflix streaming. All sorts of things, okay? So it's going to have some horsepower to it. The last one did. It was an i7, 2nd generation. Now we're going 6th generation i7. We'll talk more about that when we get to the individual components. So I just want to give a little talk. First, decide what you're going to do. If it's a home or office, not work, you might be better off, instead of building one, going to the store and just buying one. Now, the benefit you get out of building one is you know what's inside it. And if you've built them for years, you're going to build one regardless. I can use high-quality parts when I build my PC, parts that won't fail anytime soon. Shame on you, HP and Compaq. Back when I did computer repair work, your parts were crud. I was constantly replacing parts in those computers. And, yeah, it was almost always an HP or a Compaq computer. But it's been years since I've done that stuff. Now I just do my own. Anyhow, figure out what you're going to use it for. You don't really need to go building one. I'm putting these videos up because I know they will get a lot of hits and a lot of views. So if you're one of my regular subscribers, enjoy them. If you're new, well, go look at some of my other videos. You might find a hobby you like. Like I like to build little scale models of things when I have time. Anyhow, I'm going to go away. We're going to start talking about how to decide what to put in a computer.